16 years. That's how long I stood by my wife, through every storm, every high and low. I thought we were building something real, something unshakable. But sometimes, the strongest-looking structures are already hollow inside, and you don't realize it until everything collapses. My name is Daniel. I'm 43. I've spent most of my adult life married to the woman I once believed was my soulmate. We met in our early 20s, fell hard and fast, and got married before either of us had really figured out who we were. Maybe that was mistake number one, but at the time, it felt like love could conquer anything. We had 2 beautiful kids together. Our daughter, Emma, is 14, and our son, Noah, is 9. They've always been my everything. I've worked in engineering for the past 7 years, building a steady career so I could give them the life they deserved. My wife, Rachel, works as a manager at a major advertising agency. She's been there for 3 years, and while it demands a lot from her, I always supported her chasing her goals. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had a nice house in a good neighborhood, went on family vacations when we could, and always made time for game nights, barbecues, and weekend hikes. At least I did. I thought she did too. I thought we were a team. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, Rachel started pulling away. It began with little things, laughing less at my jokes, spending more nights working late, being short with me over dinner. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Life gets busy. Work piles up. I figured the spark had dulled a little, like it does in most long-term marriages. So I tried harder. I took over more around the house. I booked date nights. I bought books about reviving intimacy and poured through them like a man trying to solve a complex equation. I even asked her directly, "What can I do to make things better?" She'd sigh and say things like, "You should already know," or "It's not about doing, it's about feeling." Whatever that meant. It wasn't just her coldness that hurt, it was the comparisons. James would never forget something like that. "You know, my boss took his wife to Paris last spring. You could learn a thing or two." James, her boss, a man I'd welcomed into our home whose kids played with ours, who ate at our dinner table and offered me friendly advice when I confided in him about our marriage struggles. It felt like a slow poisoning. I was working so hard to fix us while she was slipping further and further away. I didn't want to believe something was wrong. I clung to the memories, the vacations, the birthdays, the night we danced in the kitchen to an old love song after the kids had gone to sleep. I told myself this was just a rough patch. Every marriage has them, right? But deep down, something inside me had started to ache. A dull, quiet ache that wouldn't go away. It wasn't just the fear of losing her. It was the fear that I already had. I wish I could say I found out the truth in a clean, conclusive way, but the beginning of the end came one night when I saw her smiling at her phone in bed, giggling softly like a teenager. I leaned in to see what was so funny, just curious, and she pulled away like I was invading her privacy. That moment broke something in me. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew then. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. Something was deeply wrong, and I was about to find out just how far it went. After that night in bed, something shifted in me. My trust was fraying. I could no longer ignore the signs, the way Rachel pulled away when I walked into the room, how she lit up when she got a text, but dimmed the moment she saw me. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that this was just anxiety, insecurity, exhaustion. But my gut kept screaming, "There's something she's hiding." So I asked, calmly, directly. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Is there something you're not telling me, Rachel?" She laughed, a short, cold laugh like I had accused her of stealing change from the couch cushions. "You're being paranoid," she said, her arms folded, her voice bored. "There's nothing going on." I asked to see her phone. That changed everything. She hesitated, just for a second, but long enough for the pit in my stomach to sink to the floor. She handed it to me, eyes wary. Most of the messages were clean, bland, surface level, until I realized the entire thread with her boss, James, was missing. Not just empty, gone, deleted. And then I knew. She didn't even try to explain why it was missing. "He's my boss," she snapped. "I don't need you reading through every word like some jealous teenager." I gave the phone back and we didn't talk for the rest of the night, but I couldn't sleep. My heart raced. My mind went in circles. I kept remembering the way she looked when she laughed at that message, the way she pulled the phone away like it was a lifeline. That's when I did something I never thought I'd do. I asked for help. I confided in my closest friend, David, a guy I trusted with my life. He offered to check the phone more thoroughly. He worked in cybersecurity and said he might be able to recover deleted messages. I gave him the device with shaking hands, half hoping he'd find nothing, praying I was just overthinking. But David found something. Enough, at least. He recovered fragments of texts, some screenshots of old backups, and the name James kept coming up over and over again. There was flirty banter, inside jokes, late-night messages. It wasn't graphic, not yet, but the undertone was unmistakable. This was no ordinary work relationship. Then came the moment I saw the message that crushed what little denial I had left. That weekend was perfect. Can't wait to do it again. I needed that. It was signed with a heart emoji. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I stared at the screen in David's living room, my hands trembling. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, scream, vomit, anything to release the pressure building inside my chest. Instead, I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years, the kind of cry that leaves you empty like a shell of yourself. I wasn't just grieving the betrayal, I was grieving the version of my life I thought was real. For 16 years, I had believed in her, in us. I thought we were unshakable. I thought I had found my person, but she had already given that piece of herself to someone else. Worse yet, it wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't a drunken slip or a moment of weakness. This had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of secrets, of lies, of her smiling at his texts while I made breakfast for our kids, of her staying out late at the office while I tucked our son into bed and told him how lucky we all were. 2 years of her comparing me to him, belittling me for not being romantic enough, fun enough, man enough, while she was sleeping with the man who smiled across the dinner table at me on weekends. And just like that, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I built my life around, was gone. And I had no idea what to do next. The moment I decided I couldn't keep this inside anymore was the moment I realized who I was becoming. Quiet, anxious, pretending to smile for the sake of our kids, while my wife was living a double life under the same roof. I was unraveling from the inside out, and I knew I had to confront it before it ate me alive. I waited. I needed proof. Not just digital remnants, but something undeniable. Something that couldn't be gaslit or explained away with "you're imagining things" or "you're just insecure." And I got it sooner than I expected. Rachel had told me she had to work late again, some kind of emergency project. I nodded. I didn't argue. I simply said, "Okay, be safe." My voice was flat, emotionless. She barely noticed, but I had already made a call to her boss's wife, Karen. I didn't want to pull her into this, but I needed answers. When I told her what I'd found, there was a pause on the other end of the line. Then came the words that would change everything. "I've been wondering. I think he's cheating too. We agreed to meet in person. We laid out everything: texts, timestamps, fragments of calls. It all fit together like a sick puzzle. We were both devastated, both broken in our own way. But something else sparked too. A resolve. We decided we were going to catch them." Rachel had booked a weekend business trip. It didn't take much digging to confirm the truth. She wasn't flying anywhere. She and James had booked a room at a boutique hotel about 40 miles out of town. Karen and I drove there together. Every mile felt like a heartbeat pounding in my ears. I wasn't even sure what I was going to do. Scream? Cry? Just stand there frozen? I had rehearsed it 100 times in my head, but nothing could prepare me for the real thing. We arrived on a Saturday afternoon. The hotel lobby was beautiful, modern, quiet. I handed the front desk a small folder with Rachel's name and room number. I had already spoken to the sheriff's office beforehand and had someone waiting nearby just in case things went sideways. And then I watched her descend the stairs. Rachel was wearing a white hotel bathrobe and nothing underneath. That much was obvious. Her hair was damp, her cheeks flushed, like she had just stepped out of the shower or out of a man's arms. When she saw me, her face froze mid-expression, like she couldn't decide whether to panic or play it cool. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, walking toward me. I handed her a manila envelope. "You've been served." Her eyes darted to the sheriff, who was quietly observing from the lobby chair. She opened the envelope and started scanning the divorce papers. I could see her throat tighten, her fingers trembling. "You can't do this here," she hissed. "This isn't how you already did it," I interrupted, voice calm. "You just didn't expect the consequences." She started crying. I didn't care. She reached out to grab my arm, pleading with me to talk, to let her explain, but the damage was done. Her explanations weren't mine to hear anymore. The sheriff stepped in gently. "Ma'am, I need you to step back." Rachel's face contorted in desperation, then rage. "It was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything. We weren't going to leave you." And that was the worst part, how casual her betrayal was. Like it was some minor inconvenience she had hoped I'd never notice. Like it didn't rip apart 16 years of marriage. Like it didn't poison the memories of every family barbecue, every bedtime story I'd read to our kids while she was off texting him. I turned around and walked out of the hotel. As I stepped into the car, Karen was already there, staring out the windshield, silent. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. We had both just watched our lives collapse in real time. The silence in the car and the ride back was deafening. Karen and I didn't exchange a single word. We didn't need to. There was nothing left to guess, nothing left to deny. The confrontation had been done. The damage was real. The betrayal was no longer some abstract suspicion. It was a living, breathing monster that had just ripped through both of our lives. When I got home, the kids were in bed. Our daughter, Olivia, had left her nightlight on, casting soft shadows on the walls. My son, Ethan, was curled up with his stuffed bear, the same one I had bought him when he was 3. I just stood there watching them sleep, realizing that their world, our world, was about to change forever, and not because of anything they did. The next morning, Rachel acted like she had come back from a business trip. She walked into the kitchen like she hadn't just been caught half-naked in a hotel with her boss. She asked me if I wanted coffee, like that would fix everything. I didn't answer. I just stared at her. "You're not even going to talk to me?" she snapped. "No," I said calmly. "You lost that privilege when you decided he was worth more than your marriage." She started crying. Again. But it felt rehearsed now, like she had practiced the tears in the mirror, hoping to soften the blow. She said all the things I expected. It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. He meant nothing. You and the kids mean everything to me. But she didn't get it. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was stealing memories from our kids, rewriting our family history in betrayal. Every family game night, every vacation, every school pickup, while she claimed to be working late. It was all soaked in lies now. I told her to sleep in the guest room. She didn't protest. Later that day, Karen called. She had served her husband, James, just hours after our confrontation. Apparently, he had panicked, begged, even offered to quit his job. She didn't care. She said, "If you're willing to risk your marriage for a fling, then don't expect me to fight for it more than you did." The following days blurred together. Rachel kept trying to apologize, bringing me coffee in the morning, making dinner, even suggesting we go to therapy. But it all felt hollow, like decorating a house that was already burning to the ground. My mother found out. Rachel had always been her favorite. She called me crying, saying I should reconsider, that people make mistakes. I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. I just said, "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk." This was a calculated choice, over and over again, for 2 years. The hardest part came when I had to tell Olivia and Ethan. I didn't tell them the details. They're kids, not emotional punching bags. I told them Mom and Dad were going to live in separate houses soon, that we loved them no less, that it wasn't their fault. Olivia asked, "Is Mommy mad at you?" I nearly broke right there. "No, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tightly. "It's just, sometimes grown-ups hurt each other in ways they can't fix." Ethan cried. Olivia stared at the floor. I could see a part of their innocence slipping away in that moment, and Rachel just stood there behind them, silent, watching it all happen, her lies turning into our children's pain. It was then that I knew. I was never going back. No apology, no therapy, no grand gesture could undo what she'd done. You don't recover from betrayal like that. You survive it. You rebuild from it. But you don't pretend like it never happened. Not for her, and definitely not for them. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation in that hotel lobby. 2 weeks since I served Rachel the divorce papers and watched her world collapse the way she so carelessly demolished mine. I'd been sleeping on the couch, not because I had to, but because I couldn't bring myself to breathe the same air as her in the same room. Every glance at her face reminded me of those late nights she spent in someone else's arms while I was tucking our children into bed. I kept the routine for the kids as normal as possible: school drop-offs, packing lunches, helping Olivia with her science project, reading to Ethan at bedtime. It grounded me. In the chaos of everything else, they were my constant, my reason to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Rachel, to her credit, or maybe just guilt, tried to stay present. She cooked dinner more often. She tried talking to the kids like nothing had changed, like we weren't quietly unraveling in front of their innocent eyes. But Olivia wasn't fooled. One evening, while Rachel was washing dishes, Olivia whispered, "Is Mommy going away?" I crouched beside her and said gently, "Mommy and I are figuring out some grown-up things, but no matter what happens, you'll be okay. I promise." It broke me inside. No kid should have to learn about heartbreak like this. The therapy session started at Rachel's request. She insisted on going together. I agreed, not because I wanted to save the marriage, but because I needed clarity. I needed to hear her say out loud the things she'd done, the reasons she thought they made sense. I needed her to confront it in a room where she couldn't spin it into excuses or victimhood. The first session was tense. Rachel cried the moment she sat down. The therapist, a calm, older man named Dr. Gaines, asked her why we were there. She choked out, "Because I betrayed the person I love." I stayed silent. My jaw tightened. "Loved," I corrected her. Past tense. That set the tone for the rest of the session. She spoke about feeling neglected, about how she wanted attention and excitement again. She said I had changed, become too predictable, too comfortable, too boring. I felt like I was being kicked while already bleeding out. "I gave you everything I had," I said. "And when that stopped being enough, instead of telling me, you gave yourself to someone else." She sobbed. "It wasn't about him. It was about me." "But it was about him, Rachel, because every night you went to him, you made a choice, and you made it over and over again." Dr. Gaines asked me if I thought there was any part of me that could forgive. "No," I said flatly. "Forgiveness isn't owed, and it certainly isn't earned with crocodile tears and therapy appointments." Afterward, Rachel asked me to grab coffee. I declined. I went home and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before going inside. I couldn't face her. Not again, not yet. Later that night, I found a letter on my pillow, a handwritten apology, pages and pages of remorse, self-loathing, promises of change. It ended with a single line: "Even if you never love me again, I'll spend the rest of my life loving you." I sat with that letter in my hands for a long time, and then I folded it, tucked it in the drawer, and went to bed on the couch again. Because love without trust isn't love. It's a memory. And I wasn't going to spend my future living in the past. 2 days after Rachel left the letter on my pillow, she suggested we go for a walk, just the two of us. It was a cool Sunday morning, late fall. The kids were at their grandparents' for the weekend, giving us some space, or maybe just a break from pretending. We walked through the quiet streets of our neighborhood. Trees with golden leaves lined the sidewalks, some crunching beneath our feet. I kept my hands in my pockets while she wrapped herself in the oversized scarf I gave her last Christmas. For a while, neither of us spoke, and then Rachel broke the silence with a tremor in her voice. "I know what I did can't be undone, but I need to tell you everything, even the parts you don't want to hear." I stopped walking. My chest tightened. She stared at the ground. "It started with messages, flirting, small stuff. I thought it would fade. It didn't. Then there was the first night, after a work party. He told me I looked beautiful, and I believed him. I let him believe I was someone I wasn't. Carefree, spontaneous, exciting. I wasn't your wife in those moments. I was someone else's fantasy." She paused, and I could hear the guilt in every word. I kept telling myself I'd stop, that I could control it. But it got worse. The secrecy, the thrill. It became a second life, and I hated myself every time I came home and kissed you goodnight. The breeze cut through my jacket, but I barely noticed. She looked up. Her eyes were rimmed red. You always loved me so deeply, you trusted me, and I spat on that trust. You didn't deserve it. Not you, not the kids. I stared at her for a long moment. Why him? Her face crumbled. Because he saw the cracks in me and made me think they were beautiful. You always tried to fix me, and I resented that, but I know now it was because you cared. We kept walking. I couldn't say anything. My throat was tight. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Rachel came to the couch. She sat beside me, knees tucked to her chest. I've been going to therapy alone too, she said, twice a week. I talk about everything, my past, my insecurities, my need for validation. I'm not just trying to save this marriage, I'm trying to save myself. It hit differently. For the first time, her remorse didn't sound rehearsed or manipulative. It was raw, human. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, she added. I just want you to know I'm not giving up on myself, even if you've given up on me. I turned to her. I haven't given up, but I have given in to reality. This marriage isn't what I thought it was, and maybe it never was. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she nodded. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I didn't sleep in our bed either. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many times we lie to ourselves in the name of love. How many cracks we ignore before the whole damn thing collapses. The next morning, Olivia asked me, Daddy, are you still mad at Mommy? I knelt down and hugged her. No, sweetheart, I'm just really sad. Because anger fades, but grief lingers. 3 weeks had passed since that chilly walk, and Rachel hadn't asked me to reconsider, not once. She had started cooking again, simple meals she used to make when things were good. She wasn't trying to win me back with grand gestures anymore. Instead, she moved gently around the house like a ghost who still remembered how things once were. The air between us was no longer filled with shouting or begging, just silence. A thick, heavy silence that wrapped around everything like a wet blanket. One night, we all sat at the dinner table together. Rachel, me, Olivia, and Jack. It was a Wednesday, spaghetti night. Rachel had lit a candle in the middle of the table. I don't know why. Maybe she wanted to pretend we were still a family. Maybe she just needed something warm in a room that felt colder with every meal. Jack was talking about school, about how he scored a goal during recess. His eyes sparkled as he reenacted it with his fork. Olivia giggled. Rachel laughed too, though I could see the sadness behind it. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to join them. But my fork just pushed the spaghetti around, the sauce drying at the edges of the plate. Rachel glanced at me, almost hopeful, then looked away when I didn't meet her eyes. After the kids went to bed, I stood in the kitchen rinsing dishes. Rachel came in, drying her hands on a towel. I'm going to sign the papers, she said softly. I'll give them to you in the morning. I stopped scrubbing. The water kept running. You sure? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. Yeah, I've known for a while. I think I just needed you to see I was trying, even if it was too late. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed but not defensively. She looked tired, worn but not angry. I've read every book, gone to every session. I've sat in that room and spilled everything to that therapist, hoping there was still something in me worth fixing. And maybe there is, but I also realized I broke something in you that I don't have the right to try and repair. I turned off the faucet. The sound of water draining away echoed in the sink. I don't hate you, I told her, but I can't love you the same way anymore either. It's like I tried taping up a vase after it shattered. It might hold flowers again, but it's never going to be the same vase. She looked down. A single tear fell, and she didn't bother to wipe it away. That's fair, she whispered. Later that night, I checked on the kids. Olivia was curled around her favorite stuffed bear, and Jack had one leg off the bed like always. I kissed their foreheads, lingered a moment longer than usual. In our bedroom, Rachel was already in bed, facing the wall. I didn't join her. I didn't sleep in the guest room either. I went outside, sat on the porch swing with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you reflect on everything you thought your life would be. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and looked at a photo I'd taken 3 years ago. The four of us at the beach. Jack was building a sandcastle. Olivia had ice cream on her nose, and Rachel had her head on my shoulder. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. The next morning, when I came downstairs, the manila envelope with the signed divorce papers was waiting on the counter. She had left before sunrise. No note, no final plea, just silence. And maybe that was the kindest thing she could have done. The morning Rachel left, the house felt strangely calm. Not empty, just still. The kind of stillness you feel after a storm has passed but before the damage is clear. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, staring at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Her signature was there. No post-it note, no scribbled "I'm sorry" in the margins. Just legal confirmation that it was over. 16 years of marriage filed into paperwork. The kids came down an hour later, rubbing their eyes. Jack asked, "Where's Mom?" Olivia just looked at the envelope and knew. "She left early," I said quietly. "She needed to take some time." Neither of them asked questions, not then. But Olivia didn't eat her cereal, and Jack didn't talk about cartoons like he usually did. We sat there, the three of us, in silence. 3 people trying to figure out what a family is supposed to look like now. That weekend, I took them to the mountains. We stayed in a cabin a few hours away, nothing fancy. No Wi-Fi, barely any signal. But it had a fireplace and bunk beds, and they thought that was the coolest thing ever. We hiked, we roasted marshmallows. We talked about everything except Rachel. One night, while Jack was asleep and the fire was cracking low, Olivia and I sat under a blanket on the porch swing. She was quiet for a long time, then asked, "Do you think Mom still loves us?" I felt a lump in my throat. "She does," I said. "No matter what happened between her and me, she loves you. That'll never change." She looked away, nodding, biting her lip. "Do you still love her?" That question hit differently. "I think part of me always will," I answered honestly. "But love's complicated. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's not enough." She didn't respond, just leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I hate what she did." And I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her not to say it, because in that moment, I hated it too. When we got back to town, the house felt unfamiliar again. Her clothes were gone from the closet. Her perfume no longer lingered in the bathroom. Even the way the couch cushions sat differently felt like a reminder that she wasn't coming back. And yet, oddly, I started sleeping better. Therapy became a weekly thing, not just for the kids, but for me too. I was hesitant at first, but the therapist, Monica, had this way of asking the right questions without making me feel judged. She helped me unpack a lot of the shame, the guilt, the anger, helped me understand that healing doesn't come all at once. It arrives in pieces, in quiet moments, and letting go. Rachel emailed me once. A short message. She said she hoped I was okay and thanked me for not making the divorce ugly. She wrote, "I know I don't deserve your kindness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to become a better version of myself, for the kids and maybe one day for me." I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say. I still don't. Some nights I find myself scrolling through old photos, the ones before everything fell apart, and I don't cry anymore. I just breathe through it. Sometimes I even smile. I've started jogging again, not far, just a couple miles around the neighborhood. Jack sometimes bikes beside me. Olivia likes to walk the dog in the evenings. It's not much, but it's something. A new rhythm, a new way forward, and maybe, just maybe, that's where healing begins. Not in fixing what was broken, but in learning to live with the cracks and finding beauty in who you've become because of them. It was a Saturday morning in early spring when I finally opened the box Rachel had left behind. I'd found it a few weeks earlier tucked deep in the back of the closet. Plain, taped shut, unmarked. I hadn't had the strength to look through it before. But something about the light that morning, the soft warmth through the kitchen window, the way the coffee tasted just right, told me it was time. Inside were notebooks, not diaries, not journals, just dozens of composition notebooks, the cheap kind you find stacked on school shelves for less than $1, each one filled with Rachel's handwriting. Some were labeled by year, others had just a single word on the cover: Jack. Olivia. Love. One said truth. That's the one I opened first. It wasn't a confession of the affair. That part of our lives had already detonated and left us picking up the pieces. What I found instead was a collection of letters, unsent, unspoken, and unfinished. Some addressed to me, some to the kids, some just to God or whoever is listening. There was one letter that stopped me cold. Dear Michael, I see you trying. I see you coming home late but still taking the trash out, still helping Jack with his math, still remembering how Olivia likes her toast cut in triangles. I see you being good, kind, steady, and I still hurt you. I don't know why I can't feel whole. I don't know what's wrong in me. I keep trying to blame you for not knowing how to reach me, but the truth is, I locked the door and swallowed the key years ago. You deserved more than my silence. I'm sorry I gave you so little while demanding so much. If I ever have the courage to speak this out loud, I'll thank you properly. Until then, I hope someday you read this and know that I loved you in the only way I knew how. I didn't know what to feel. Grief? Anger? Pity? I just sat there, the notebook open on the kitchen counter, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling. It was the first time in weeks I didn't feel like I was drowning. Her words, flawed as they were honest. Painfully honest. She wasn't trying to win me back. She wasn't spinning anything. It was just raw. Later that night, I sat with Olivia on the porch swing again. She was wrapped in a hoodie that used to be Rachel's. Too big for her, but she wore it almost every day now. Do you think Mom regrets it? She asked softly. I think she regrets a lot, I said. I miss her, Olivia whispered. I know, me too. We sat in silence for a bit, and then she said something that nearly broke me. Even if you two aren't together anymore, it's okay. You're still both my parents. Sometimes it takes the wisdom of a 14-year-old girl to remind you that not everything has to be black and white. I went back to the box the next day, read more of the letters. There were some meant for Olivia and Jack, birthdays she missed, days she felt like a bad mom, moments of pride she never spoke out loud. I didn't show them yet. I'm still not sure if or when I will, but I saved them because one day maybe they'll want to understand her in the same way I'm trying to. Rachel called once that week. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I needed space to feel everything without rushing to forgive, or to rage, or to resolve. I'm still learning how to live in that space. The in-between, where healing happens not all at once but slowly, through letters never sent, words finally heard, and the soft, quiet hope that maybe one day we'll all be okay. It was a week after I found the notebooks when the letter arrived. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, mailed, stamped, with Rachel's handwriting on the envelope. I found it tucked between bills and credit card offers, my name written in the same slanted script she used to leave grocery lists on the fridge with. Just Michael. For a long moment, I didn't move. The kids weren't home. It was just me and the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. I stared at the envelope like it might catch fire if I opened it too fast. Eventually, I sat at the table and broke the seal. Michael, I know I don't deserve your time. I know that writing you now may be selfish, but I've been thinking for weeks, and I need to say something that I didn't know how to say before. I don't want you back because I'm afraid of being alone. I want you back because for 16 years, you were the best thing I had, and I threw it away for reasons I'm only now beginning to understand. When I was with him, it wasn't love. It was escape. It was attention. It was validation. He made me feel like someone again, but it wasn't real. It was a mask, a lie I let myself believe because I couldn't face how empty I felt inside. I disrespected you. I betrayed your trust, the trust of our children, and worst of all, I made you question your worth. That is what I regret the most. You were always enough, Michael. You were more than enough. I just couldn't see it because I couldn't see myself clearly. And by the time I did, I had already shattered everything. I know you're hurt. I know you've moved on in some ways, and I accept that. But I want to ask for just one thing. If one day you ever feel ready to talk, not to fix things, not to rebuild what we lost, but just to understand each other better, I will be here, not as your wife, but as the mother of our children, as someone who, despite every awful decision, still loves you. I'm sorry. I am truly, deeply sorry. Rachel. By the time I finished reading, the kitchen was filled with silence again. Except this time, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt peaceful. Heavy, but peaceful. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't moved, but because I think I'd already cried all the tears I had left for us. What Rachel had written wasn't an excuse. It wasn't manipulation. It was, for once, a full admission of truth. No self-pity, no justifications, just vulnerability. Later that evening, I showed the letter to Olivia. She read it slowly, tracing her finger over the words like she was memorizing them. When she looked up, her eyes were red but steady. "She's trying," she said. "Yeah," I nodded. "She is." Olivia didn't say she forgave her mother, but she folded the letter carefully and asked if she could keep it in her room. I let her. Jack came home later, bouncing off the walls from soccer practice, unaware that the air in the house had shifted slightly, not healed, but softened. I didn't write back to Rachel. I didn't need to, not yet, but I did something I hadn't done in months. I sat down at the piano in the living room and played, the same piece I used to play when the kids were toddlers, when Rachel would hum along from the kitchen. As my fingers moved across the keys, I felt something loosen inside me. Not forgiveness, maybe, but grace. A space inside myself that was no longer only filled with anger. Some stories don't end with a door slamming shut. Sometimes they end with a quiet letter, and the sound of music returning to a house that almost forgot what peace felt like. A few days after Rachel's letter, I received another unexpected message. This time from Carl, yes, that Carl. The man who, for 2 years, helped tear my marriage apart. It wasn't a letter, it was a voicemail. 30 seconds of breathless rambling that sounded like someone rehearsed a speech, then panicked halfway through and hit send anyway. "Michael, hey, I don't know if this is even the right thing to do, but I've been meaning to reach out. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. Really, about everything. I'm in therapy. I've been trying to clean up my life. I know it doesn't mean much now, but if there's ever a time you feel ready to talk, just talk. I'll be here." I stared at the screen for a long time. Of all the people in this storm, Rachel, the kids, even my own family, he was the only one I never expected to hear from. He had vanished so completely after the affair went public, I half thought he'd moved out of state or changed his name. I didn't reply. That night, Olivia caught me staring blankly at my phone at the dinner table. She tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, just like Rachel used to do when she sensed something was off. "Dad?" she asked. "You okay?" I slid the phone face down. "Yeah, sweetheart, just tired." Jack was too busy talking about his school's Halloween party to notice. He was grinning ear to ear about being a zombie astronaut. Olivia wasn't fooled. After dinner, she followed me into the garage where I was folding laundry. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Did Mom text you again?" I shook my head. "Not Mom, Carl." The moment the name left my lips, Olivia's expression darkened. She had never spoken much about Carl since everything blew up. I never forced her to, never even asked. But that night, she looked me square in the eye. What did he want? He said he's sorry, that he's in therapy now, that he's trying to be better. She was silent for a beat. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I kind of hope he is." I paused, caught off guard. "You do?" She nodded. "Because if he's better, it means he won't hurt anyone else like he hurt us. I don't care if he ever talks to us again, but I hope he doesn't ruin someone else's life like he ruined yours, and Mom's, and mine." That last word, mine, hit me hard, because it was the first time Olivia claimed her pain out loud. It wasn't just about what Rachel and Carl did to me, it was what they did to her world too. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, baby, I hope he's better too." Later that night, I sat outside on the back porch with a blanket over my legs and a glass of iced tea sweating in my hand. The fall air was crisp, the kind that smelled faintly of dried leaves and change. Carl's message played in my mind again, but I didn't feel rage this time. I felt distance. Emotional distance, like the kind you feel looking at a storm that's already passed. You still see the broken fences, the torn-up grass, but you're no longer standing in the rain. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I may never be, but I wasn't drowning in fury either, and that in itself was a small kind of victory. The next morning I deleted the voicemail, not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. I had my kids, I had peace. I had a future that no longer included ghosts from hotel rooms and whispered apologies in the dark. Some chapters close quietly, and some you close yourself, with steady hands and a heart that's learning to heal. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I sat alone in the courtroom, my lawyer by my side, as the judge signed off on the papers. Rachel wasn't there in person. She signed everything virtually. In some strange way, it was fitting. Our marriage had slowly faded into distance, silence, and cold avoidance. Why should the ending be any different? Afterward, I walked to my car and just sat there. No music, no calls, just the soft patter of rain against the windshield. It wasn't a moment of triumph. It wasn't even relief. It was grief, a quiet, aching grief for the life I had built and lost. And yet, there was something else. Peace, not loud, not triumphant, just stillness, the kind that comes when you've cried all your tears and survived it. That night, I came home to find Olivia in the kitchen making grilled cheese. Jack was watching cartoons with a blanket wrapped around him like a cape. Olivia glanced up and saw the look on my face. She didn't ask. She just set down her spatula and gave me the kind of hug that makes you realize how lucky you are to be a parent. She whispered, "It's done." I nodded. "Yeah, it's done." We didn't talk about it more that night. Some things don't need words. Sometimes love looks like letting someone quietly fall apart and still making sure dinner doesn't burn. Over the next week, Rachel called a few times. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to say. But what surprised me most was how she stopped trying. No more long texts, no more tearful voicemails. It was like even she knew. It was time. She moved into a small apartment about 10 minutes from us. The kids see her on weekends. At first it was awkward, especially for Olivia, but Rachel, to her credit, didn't push. She let them come to her when they were ready, and over time, they did. One Saturday morning, Olivia came home after spending the night with Rachel. She looked thoughtful, quiet in a way I hadn't seen before. "She's trying, Dad," she said softly, sitting on the edge of the couch. "She knows she messed up, and I think she really regrets it." I looked at her, this young woman who had grown so much in such a short time. "And how do you feel about that?" "I don't hate her anymore," she said, "but I don't trust her either, not yet." Fair, that's all I could ask for. As for me, I'm still figuring it out. Some days I miss what we had, not Rachel, not anymore. But the dreams we built together, the shared history, the quiet mornings with coffee and cartoons playing in the background, the little moments that made up a life. But I've also learned that holding on to the past doesn't make it come back. It only stops you from walking towards something new. The other betrayed partner and I, we're still in contact. We've taken a step back from whatever it was becoming between us. Not because we didn't care, but because we both knew we needed to heal separately before we could build anything new together. It was a hard decision, but a mature one. This past Christmas, we celebrated as a family, just the kids and me. We baked cookies, watched Home Alone for the 50th time, and laughed until we cried. For the first time in years, there was no tension, no pretending, just love. And that's when I realized, sometimes letting go isn't about punishing the person who hurt you. It's about giving yourself permission to stop hurting. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I am not broken. I am not less than. And I will never again settle for a love that makes me question my worth. Because real love, the kind that stays, is built on trust, respect, and truth. And I owe myself nothing less.